Chairman Williams, recording
Yes.
has begun.
Perfect. I know. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin. Madam Clerk, is the applicant here? You are the applicant. Okay. All right. So at this time, sorry, the script I've been given doesn't quite line up with the agenda, but that's okay. So at this time, everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Has every members of the board reviewed the minutes from our last meeting? Okay, are there any notes on the minutes? No. Any corrections? Okay, may I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
Motion to adopt.
In a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the minutes from the meeting on April 12th, 2023 are hereby approved. And now we'll move on to public hearing. I'm sorry. The meeting was called to order. My apologies at 6:01 or 7:01 p.m. at this time. This is public hearing BOA-000647-2023 regarding the Harford Street development. First, I'll review the procedures. Madam Clerk, would you care to review the procedures, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Town of La Plata public hearings are conducted in the following manner. A sign-in sheet is provided at the entry of council chambers for any public hearing attendees to register to speak if they have not already done so in advance. Registration to speak will end when the public hearing is opened. The presiding officer will call registered speakers to the podium. Speakers who have registered to speak in advance via the town webpage will be recognized prior to speakers who register upon arrival at the public hearing. At the discretion of the presiding officer, speakers' comments may be limited to 3 minutes and may not be yielded. Written documents for the record submitted in advance of the public hearing are provided to the presiding officer prior to the opening of the public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So now I will officially call to order the public hearing on the previously mentioned case, and it is 6:02 or 7:02 p.m. Pardon me. Madam Clerk, has the notice of public hearing been properly advertised?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For the record, this public hearing was advertised in the Southern Maryland newspaper in the June 23rd, 2023 issue, as reflected on the certificate of publication attached to the meeting agenda. As indicated in the clerk's affidavit, letters were sent to owners of the properties contiguous to and opposite the property by certified mail, and a sign was posted visible from Harford Street and adjoining public right-of-way. Notice of this public hearing was also advertised on the town webpage.
Director Harrington, will you provide the staff summary and recommendations, please?
Yes. Good evening. For the record, Janine Harrington, Director of Planning for the town. So for this special exception request, they are looking to develop 4.99 acres in the R8 zoning district to allow for a senior living community in accordance with Town Code Section 191-10, use number 7, and subject to the special provisions as listed in Chapter 191-52.h.28. The current property is undeveloped. Under the comprehensive plan, it has a medium density residential designation. For the surrounding land uses, to the north is existing residential zoned R10. To the south is existing residential zoned R8 and R3. To the east is existing residential R8, and to the west is the proposed Pine Grove subdivision, as well as the CSX railroad, and Pine Grove is designated as TDX. So the applicant is looking to put 20 dwelling units, and that's 10 duplex units. It's a little confusing. I think there was some confusion in the publication, but it's 20 dwelling units total and basically 10 duplex throughout the site. The site has 100 feet of approximately 100 feet of frontage along Harford Street And it has been brought to my attention that I have misspelled Harford Street. There is no T in there, so just an FYI. But they do have 100 foot of frontage along Harford Street, which meets the minimum acreage requirements, and they also have the minimum number of acres with 4.99 acres. They have provided 20-foot front setbacks, 15-foot side setbacks, and 20-foot rear setbacks in accordance with the code, and a required F buffer yard, and they've shown a 20-foot F buffer yard around the entire perimeter of the property. And residency and occupancy restrictions will be required prior to the issuance of any occupancy permits. If the special exception use is approved, the project would then proceed forward with major site plan review. And I think we've lost our TV again. I don't know why.
This one, but not that one.
Yeah. But if the use was approved, then it would move forward with the major site plan. And that's where we would be reviewing for water, stormwater, sewer, forest conservation, and other zoning requirements that are needed throughout the zoning code. So as far as the criteria for approval and findings under Chapter 191-52.f, the applicant has submitted all documentation as required by the section. And I've referenced the attached supporting documentation for BOA-000647-2023. And I'll also note that the Planning Commission reviewed the application on July 5th, 2023, and provided an unanimous recommendation of approval. Under Section 191-52.g findings, the proposed use does not violate the town's comprehensive plan, which shows this property designated as medium density residential. The property could be developed as single-family detached dwellings by right. The applicant has submitted the application for a senior living community, and that does allow for duplex units in the R8 zone. And again, the applicant has provided detailed responses to all of those findings in their supporting documentation. So with that, as noted on July 5th, 2023, the Planning Commission provided a unanimous recommendation to the Board of Appeals for approval to allow for the construction of a senior living community as shown and detailed in the staff report. And with that, that concludes my summary. If you have any questions of me, or if you'd like to move on to the.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Harrington. Do any members of the board have any questions for Director Harrington?
Just one quick question. We can't have any kind of documentation as far as water and sewage, or maybe storm treatment pond, or
So
any of that information?
They do show the conceptual stormwater management on the plan in the center open space area, but really it's the way that the code works. We're approving the use of a senior living community. And if we find that it meets the minimum requirements for a senior living community, then it would go into the major site plan review. And that's where the Planning Commission would be reviewing for water, sewer, stormwater management. I'd have to do a full forest conservation review and environmental review.
Okay, and what about the, I guess, Harford or Hartford?
It's Harford.
Harford. What about the width and fire apparatus?
So that would be reviewed during the major site plan as well. We are coordinating with the La Plata Volunteer Fire Department during all of our site plan reviews. So they'd be looking at that. Harford Street is a town road, so any improvements could be made by the town if that's needed.
Go ahead.
Mr. Burris, do you have any questions? Okay, I have so it indicates that the property is 100 feet of frontage on Harford Street. I'll note for the record that the street names in the town of La Plata are named after counties in Maryland, and Harford County rather than Hartford, which is the town in Connecticut.
You have that.
I don't have that. That's what I was looking for. And so the 100 feet of frontage, that is through parcel 5 that I see there, which is an existing home. Is that correct?
No, there's
Nothing there?
there's a vacant lot at the front, so it's basically two parcels, two
Okay.
lots.
So I'm looking at parcel, I'm looking at the tax map 190. It says P442, which is the overarching, that's the main wooded area, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then there is P3, this is an adjoining property that fronts on Harford Street, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so the entrance is good, and you're saying, yeah, and you're saying right now that is that's an empty lot.
Correct.
Okay. And so that lot has it been joined with the other lot for the purposes of ownership?
It does have consecutive ownership as far as I'm aware.
Okay. And is there any issue that could be foreseen with it being two different plots?
No.
With regard to any property issues that may come up?
No.
Okay. And sorry, I just need to. Otherwise, this property, the main part of the property where the development will actually occur would be landlocked. Is that correct?
Correct.
So it's got the CSX right away to the east, and the spots to the west are already developed with single family homes, and then there's Washington Avenue.
Correct.
So
There-
does that mean that the only way for entry and egress from this overall property is through this plot on Harford Street?
That is correct. There was an existing easement, and the applicant may be able to explain it a little better than I can. But they did note a while ago that there was a easement that was present that would allow access to this lot. But in purchasing the larger portion, they went ahead and purchased this lot, and then we'll use the easement for utilities as needed to move the entryway and the right of way away from the existing homes.
Okay, and where is that easement?
I'm not sure if it's shown on the site plan that I have in front of me.
Yeah, these are the apartment buildings here. All right, I don't have any further questions. Does anybody else have any questions based on my questions? Thank you, Director Harrington. And at this time, we will hear from the applicant. Yeah, I swear. All right, there's a few people. So how many people are planning on testifying? All four of you? Correct. Are all four of you gonna present testimony? Okay, who's gonna? Okay, so anybody who's gonna make a statement, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly declare or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the statements you'll make will be the truth and nothing but the truth? Perfect, thank you. And state your names for the record. Thank you. Please proceed.
So, Mr. Williams, I think we can address a little bit about the access for the larger parcel. So initially, there was a right of way that came off of Kent Avenue for the purpose of extending that street into that parcel. However, that right of way goes between the existing apartments and very close to an existing residence. And we felt that would probably impede the privacy of that resident, and it would also be very congested going in and out. So we spoke with the town, talked about how we would propose to do the water and sewer. We'd like to bring that in through that area and then create a loop as needed. And we would use the existing parcel that we purchased to do the ingress and egress that allows us to have a nice more open entrance. It's also the project is designed in a loop. So with the loop, I don't know if Kelly has that map. Next page, possibly. But by creating that loop, we we allow for a buffer area all the way around. We also have the interior section, which has some really nice heritage trees we want to preserve. So we want to do some landscaping in that area and make that more of a gathering place. So the whole idea here was we have a very well-established community in this area. We wanted to keep we wanted to use the senior housing. It's not as invasive. That's not probably a good word to use, but from a services standpoint and from a traffic standpoint, it certainly is a better use in the existing community. So we have done senior housing in La Plata before. Our family has developed Washington Square. We're familiar with the needs of seniors, and it's a growing and changing need. We also did the project Hickory Ridge in La Plata. So we're familiar with developing here. Both of those communities have maintained their values. We've tried to use innovative architecture and the architecture from those projects, and they're now, 30 years old. The architecture still stands up today. Any questions?
Mr. Thorne, do you have a question?
Well, my one big question is, and I know I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, the width of the street and the circle, will it be wider than Harford? Do you know?
I don't know,
Offhand?
to be
Okay.
honest with you.
Okay.
It is designed to be a two-way. I mean, that was one of the things that we considered also with regard to the senior use. Because we know sometimes it's difficult getting in and out and even with emergency vehicles. So the whole idea behind the circle is that if we needed emergency exit, they could come from either side.
Okay.
Mr. Burris?
Question.
Yeah.
Engineer,
Yes, sir.
do you have an answer for that?
At this time, this is a concept plan, but we will design it to town standards. We will run turning templates to ensure that emergency equipment, fire trucks will be able to make their maneuvers safely.
Thank you. I'm not gonna say as eloquent as how you just said it, but you were talking about the space for the gathering, or that's under the trees, or, I mean, where was that at on this diagram?
So in the center section,
Okay,
that's a fairly good size center area, and we wanted to incorporate, and we have not really fully developed the plan because we're not certain about how much stormwater management is going to be needed in that area and whether we have to move it to other areas on the site. But the idea there is to create a park-like setting, benches, perhaps a gazebo like we've done at some of the other communities. And we've actually spoken about some of the kind of neat exercise equipment that's out in some of the senior communities today. I can't explain it. It would be probably, Lisa can answer that better than me. Like walking and some arm exercise, just to try to encourage an active community.
thank
Mhm.
One more question.
Mhm.
Any plans on, because I mean, I know we're right up against the tracks.
Mhm.
I guess your plans as far as noise buffering for those seniors?
So, an interesting story. When we went to develop Washington Square, which is right on the tracks, our banker, our lender, went out on Harford and some of the roads in that area and started asking some of the community members if the train was bothersome to them. And they said, "What train?" So he said, "Well, okay, well, never mind." So we've never had any issues with it.
Okay.
It is our intent to do some type of at least screening down there, and we will have the buffer, that planted buffer there. So hopefully that will help with the sound. But I'm sure the people that live there right now, feel the same way.
Because I can't hear from my house, so I don't know.
And if I may add to that, so they have the 20-foot F buffer yard shown. That does require a fence to be provided.
Okay,
And the railroad tracks, since they are decommissioning the power plant, they have not been using the train tracks pretty much at all as of recently, and they'll only be using it sparingly as they decommission that plant as needed. So it's not as much of an issue as it used to be.
It's my understanding that the rumor is we could be lucky enough to get ourselves a rail trail once they're finished.
It's a long ways off, but
Mhm.
there's always the
That's
potential.
always the hope.
okay.
Mr. Burris, do you have questions?
I did. Um. This might help a little bit with. Sorry, this might help a little bit with what we were just talking about, but. Plot 442 is the main body that you're looking at here.
Mhm.
That is 4.69 acres.
Mhm.
So. Your egress and ingress is 0.3. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Approximately, yes.
Because I saw two different numbers. That's why I just want to make sure I'm seeing 4.69. I'm seeing 4.99.
4.99 is the total area of both parcels.
Mhm. Correct.
So the 0.3 is that second vacant lot parcel along Harford Street.
And normal size of a entranceway is less than what the 0.3 would be for this.
Oh,
Is that
yes.
correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. It allows us to have a buffer on either side of the entrance as well.
So many questions got answered already. We asked a question about the train tracks. I was going to ask if it's still being in use. Obviously, it's coming to an end on its use. Which was going to lead into the noise abatement for the train. But I'm a little confused on a statement in here. In your statement here, you have the proposed use is residential, single family, and will not be required to provide any additional noise proofing other than those usual and customary code requirements for single family homes.
Okay, it's single family they're attached.
So they're not
yeah,
single family homes, they are.
they are attached.
They're
They're
attached.
duplexes, but yes.
So according to that, then, are we wording this incorrectly where now someone saw that, they would think to themselves, the fire marshal doesn't have to worry about the fire protection between the two homes, don't have to worry about the noise between the two homes. When actually they are attached, and both those things need to be considered.
Absolutely, they would be considered anyway during that whole building process. And
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I did not swear you in. That's why I was asking if everybody wanted to testify. But feel free, stand up and raise your right hand. Lisa Holmes, and do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you'll give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Feel free.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just wanted to say that that is part of building code, and that's something that we do anytime we do any kind of building project. The first thing that we do is to address those code issues. It's very much so.
No, I understand. I'm sure you guys do it all. It's just, if you looked at that wording, you would think that you don't need to have that because you have single family homes, which might have like, half an acre or acre in between where you're not concerned about the next people's house catching on fire. Where here, you are attached. So the wording is kind of in that section just throws it off a little bit. Does that make sense?
it does,
Like, I
yes.
just want to make sure I address that because I didn't want that wording to come out later on and well, no one told us, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, I can address that. Is there a button I have to
It's
push?
already on.
Okay. Yes, again, that would be part of the building code requirement that if you are within a certain distance, then there are certain things that we would have to do, and that would be vetted during our process of design, but also during the building code review. It is, there are requirements that, just have to be met, and they would supersede anything that we could do in this room. So that's,
Understood.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am. You guys addressed. It's page 66. You guys address indoor and outdoor security plan with adequate lighting will be provided for the shared outdoor areas of the safety of the residents. Is lighting the only security thing we're doing, or do these homes come with a ring or, you know, such things? Or is there cameras throughout the property for people coming in and out that helps identify people who may not have supposed to have been there? The police can say, hey, we're gonna go to the CCTVs to see what, is any of that part of this security plan?
At this point, no, we have not developed a full security plan, but I'm certain that all of the homes will have some type of ring security.
Okay,
I use that term loosely, so
understood.
like a Xerox, sorry.
No problem, no problem at all. Consciously, I just have to ask some of these questions. Like, one of the things I would look at and say is, you know, we're building a senior living,
Mhm.
okay? So it's not a senior home, it's a senior living.
Correct.
Um,
It's active adult.
right, active adults who some may start protruding towards dementia, say.
I
where
hope not.
we all,
Just saying, we all will,
we
but
all
I mean,
hope
I
not.
like to think that just because you're 55, you're not getting there right yet.
when I turn 55, I'm gonna forget that I'm 55 and say I'm 50. I'm with you. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're thinking about that as this process is going on, that's all.
We do consider the whole entire aging process. I mean, it is still independent living, so it's not designed to be assisted living. So the idea is, though, that we want to build a product that will allow the person who is 55 to live there as long as they can. So
I think the two questions, I think. Just to for myself, Janine, I'm sorry, I had a question for you. Harford, is it considered a collector, arterial, or primary local street? Which one?
It's a good question. I have to look back at the town code to specifically determine which one it was. I do know it's a town owned and maintained road, but I'm not entirely sure. I know it meets the requirements for the width and the type of street to have a frontage on.
And then I noticed one point, it said something about 400 feet of footage.
100 foot.
100 feet in front of them.
That's,
Yeah, maybe it's,
that's what?
I was wondering what you were referencing before.
Yeah, I usually highlight that, my stupid questions, but. I might have read it wrong, so I apologize. The 100 feet on, 100 feet of footage on Harford is your egress and ingress
correct,
of the 0.3 width of that 0.3.
correct.
Okay. And we are going with duplex, not multiplex, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I asked.
Perfect. All right, Madam Clerk, can we bring the site plan back up on the screen up in here? Thank you. Okay, so I can see around the edge of the property, the proposed buffer, correct, between the dark broken line, which I guess is the actual border, and then there's another line inside of that. That's the 20-foot buffer
Yes, sir.
surrounding the property. What is the plan for the existing tree cover and et cetera in that buffer zone when the construction starts?
Our intent, I mean, if you look, I mean, it's a small picture, but if you look, say, on the railroad side, on the right-hand side of that plan, you see a kind of squiggly line to the left of that buffer. That would be our proposed limit of disturbance. So we're trying to leave as much of that area as natural as we possibly can.
And we have done that with a few other projects as well, where a buffer yard is required. We're asking them to maintain as much of the existing forest as possible and then to supplement with landscaping as needed to meet the buffer yard requirements.
Okay. And so the plan then is to keep in the center of the cul-de-sac, if we can call it that, because it's not really a cul-de-sac, but there'll be an open space with any of the mature trees being retained for shade and et cetera.
Yes,
And then landscaping done underneath of that, correct?
correct.
And then I guess it would be cleared out to that proposed, for lack of a better word, squiggly line on the, that's already on the site plan.
Correct. Now, we have not yet established our full architecture. So once we know that we've have the approval to move forward with senior, then we will work on our architecture. The objective here is to clear as little as we possibly can.
Now, and it's pointed out in your application, this property is already zoned R8.
Mhm.
What is the plan to subdivide it and develop it if we do not approve senior living community?
We would develop it in accordance with the R8.
Okay, and would that look the same as this?
Probably not.
And how many, Director Harrington, how many R8, how many units, if it's R8, could fit on this property?
Is there someone that's better at math than I am?
It's not me.
23,560 divided by 8,000. I mean, you
It's
could
25.
probably still get up to about 20 dwelling units. I mean, if you look at 4.99 acres, I guess I should probably look at 4.69. Yeah, you're still looking about 20 dwelling units. Given, making sure that you take into driveways and right of way and those types of things and entryways. But if you take the 4.69 and you divide that or multiply that by 43,560 and then divide that by 8,000, you get 25.5. So they're still about the same with the density.
Okay. And I think this is probably getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but staging for construction would occur where?
On the site itself.
On site? And that would also obviously take into account the preservation of whatever
Absolutely.
existing
Yes.
tree cover would be there.
The
Yeah.
town would require a forest conservation plan to be submitted, and prior to any grading beginning, they would have to put up the forest conservation signage and silt fence for the limits of disturbance to protect any of the existing forest.
And we've already done an identification of the larger trees that we would like to try to preserve. So those have been mapped on the property and surveyed.
And okay, so with your application, you've indicated that a traffic study is not required by the county code. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so the hitch that we have continually in these hearings is that the town of La Plata code in section G D 5, it says the proposed use at the location selected will not constitute a nuisance because of noise, traffic, number of people, or type of physical activity. And I think that despite the fact that the planning commission does not require any kind of traffic presentation, and that the county does not require it based on the county code, we cannot approve a special exception without a showing on the record that the construction will not cause a nuisance. And I am very concerned already with the state of Washington Avenue, which has very terrific backup on it, especially if this is going to be a senior living, I guess not assisted living, correct? Independent living.
Independent, correct.
With the issue would be that you would have to make a left turn off of Harford Street or go down Kent Avenue to get to the hospital. So would an ambulance coming from the if they were coming from the volunteer fire station, which is very close to this location. Traffic is essentially horrific on Washington Avenue. We're adding 20 new dwelling units here with a new outlet onto a very small road that only has a few houses on it. And I need to have some kind of showing that it will not pose a traffic nuisance, despite the fact that the code does not, that the county code does not require a traffic study based on the proposed number of trips, which, you know, I think may seem reasonable. But in looking at all the totality of the circumstances of something like this, in the location where it is and the existing infrastructure, I do need some kind of showing of what the traffic is going to look like.
We talked about the traffic a little bit on this, and without the study being required, we did not provide it. However, senior housing does generate significantly less traffic than typical housing. Typically, you'd have one or two persons living in the home, as opposed to a family where you may have adults and several children residing that all could possibly drive. So, I mean, we can certainly provide a comparison. There have been many, many comparison studies for independent living versus typical single family housing.
And in the documentation I've submitted, we do have pulled some standard trip generation model from the Institute of Verification Engineers trip generation manual. Peak hour trips here for weekday peak hour based on this use, 7 AM peak hours, total trips is weekday, PM peak hours, 8 total trips. And weekend peak hours, 5 total trips is what we would use for any type of traffic study. So in my opinion, those low numbers really wouldn't have a huge impact, if any at all, on any of this. It is a concern that you have.
I understand the position. That my problem is that I can't, I mean, there's 20 units, maybe 40 people living here, correct?
Correct.
And we're saying that there are only going to be 7 cars coming out of this place in the morning on the weekdays
During the peak hour.
during the peak hours. And then Saturday and Sunday, I would assume on the weekends, people would be driving more than on the weekdays. Is this going to be a managed community?
As far as a homeowners association,
Correct. And-
absolutely.
Well, maybe that's not what I mean. So we heard a hearing for another property off of Route 6 that was proposing having a, you know, it was a little bit more, it was still an independent housing community for 55 plus, et cetera, but they're going to have like a community center, and they proposed having buses to bring people back and forth from there. There's no community center in this.
No, there's
Okay.
not for
In,
20 units,
the restrictive covenant for age is going to be what?
55.
55. So the 55-year-olds at the young end of that, and certainly even into the older, would potentially still be working, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And, you know, so we can't guarantee that during peak trip time on weekdays, it's only going to be 7 people. It could be 40.
Theoretically, yes. I mean, it's taken from a traffic study, but I mean, that as opposed to, as I was saying before, a standard single family unit would definitely generate more peak trips.
I do agree with you with that.
Yeah, and I'm over 55 and I don't stay at home.
Yeah. Well, that's the, I'm not quite there yet.
I'm the opposite. I'm less than 55, but I never leave my house.
So one major part of the most recent town comprehensive plan is a effort to increase walkability through all development. What is the plan for walking access to Washington Avenue, if any?
We do have sidewalks incorporated with the existing, with the roadway. You know, right now, I don't believe that there are sidewalks on Washington Avenue. I know that that has been talked about for about 40 years.
Just about.
So,
We are moving forward with something, though, I've heard. I don't have the details, but I know that the town has gotten involved and we are partnering with the county to focus on getting that done. There are no existing sidewalks on Harford Street. So, but there's plenty of people that do walk down Kent Avenue and Harford Street as well as Washington Avenue.
Yeah, and my concern there is that it's, you know, if the folks want to walk to Target, which from this one they actually could, it's unsafe to do so and impracticable, and that'll just force more people into their cars, leading to more traffic.
Yeah, but that is a county project that's currently being worked on to do upgrades to Washington Avenue with sidewalks.
that's not really a senior issue.
No. And it's not an issue that this developer could do anything with.
No, I understand that. Does anybody have any other questions?
No.
Yes, fine, Mr. Brooks.
I'm sorry, one last question.
That's okay.
It's just, it's, I'm trying to run through my head right now. Inside your eyes and needle, the needle eye here. You're talking about a possible gazebo, benches, tables. But in here you said you're not gonna put any.
We just don't have any specific plans yet as to what we're going to do, but if you go to Hickory Ridge, we have several of the parcels that were built there that have a treed area in the center. And some of those areas have gathering spots and benches and whatnot. So the intent is that we do want that to be used for open space and, you know, for gathering and for people to go out and get air and hopefully sit and talk with one another.
So we're not looking to have like prom after parties and things.
Probably not.
I mean, the senior community prom by all means.
30-year anniversary, national anniversary, something.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah,
know.
probably not a lot of after prom parties or high school. Yeah, no.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm looking in your application for discussion of the potential impact on the sewer and water system in the town.
It's something that would definitely be looked at during final plan and major site plans as far as doing any calculation for sewer capacity, water capacity, and all of that. And we just work with the town to ensure those capacities are met.
Generally, what we would do is we would take the 20 dwelling units and multiply that each one by 250 gallons per day. So you'd be looking at approximately 5,000 gallons per day for the entire neighborhood, which is relatively minor compared to the other developments that we have going on.
And that's an interesting point. And that 5,000 gallons a day, that's per unit?
No, that would
For the
be
whole
for the entire development. It would be each dwelling unit would generate 250 gallons per day, and that's our broad estimate. It's a high estimate as well.
And these will be tied to town water, not on wells?
Yes,
and they will be to the sewer, not septic.
correct.
And is there an estimate on impact to the sewer system?
It'd be approximately the same.
Okay.
We use that same number for both.
What goes in must come out, I guess.
Yes.
So, and that combined, Director Harrington, that combined with the other developments in the town, that's not going to pose a burden on the
The-
water system.
What we have right now is a development capacity analysis that's ongoing, and we have projects that are in the queue. So this is a risk that this developer is taking, that if they get their senior use approved, but they don't act on the major site development plan and don't get approval, and we run out of amount of water, then they're not reaching their final approval and they would be on hold until that capacity became available.
Okay. And how do we, I guess, once again, go into the statute, section GD, 2, overburden existing and planned public facilities. How do we know that this is not going to be a burden on the sewer and water?
It's a hypothetical question that I don't know the exact answer to, but like I said, we have, if this were to be approved today and they got their major site plan approved, we would have plenty of water and sewer to accommodate them. If they wait and they do not move forward with the proper approvals and other projects come before them, then it might pose a problem and they wouldn't get final approval. That's not the, that's why we do keep track of that. We not only monitor it on the, what's actually coming out of the ground on our operational side, but I'm doing the planning ahead to kind of figure out when that pivotal point is going to happen. So we have plenty of projects that are in the queue. We have plenty of preliminary plans that have been approved, but nobody's come forward to do their final plats. So it's pending. So we still have plenty of water and sewer in the system. And if they move forward, then we would be able to accommodate that.
And does that planning and the plats you describe as not having been finalized, does that include Pine Grove?
Some of it, yes. Most of it, yes.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Well, just for curiosity's sake, gas or propane?
There's no
Is there-
natural
oh,
gas
that's right.
there. So I would assume that if somebody wanted to have propane, or some type of gas type of equipment, stoves, whatnot, they would use propane.
Okay, but your plan is everything's electric.
Typically, yes.
Just curious.
Mhm.
Any other questions from the
No.
board? Okay, so I will close questions by the board at this time. Madam Clerk, have you received any additional written statements to be included in the record?
No, Mr. Chair, none have been received.
At this time, then, let's enter the written documents into the record.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we, looks like we do have 3 members of the public. When you're called upon to speak, please come up to the podium. I'll swear you in and you will get 3 minutes. What time is it? Oh, we're doing pretty well today. 3 minutes. I'll give you a little bit of wiggle room because we only have one case today, but let's go with Ms. Amy Eaton first. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that testimony you'll give will be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please proceed.
You talked about the impact on at where Kent Avenue goes into the original entry to that area. Well, now you're going to impact the 2 neighbors that flank the woods that goes from Harford into that area. So you're switching one for the other. I mean, you're saying that it's not big enough to go where it is right now, but that you're going to take down all the trees and make an entrance of a wooded lot to get in, which will impact, if it's two lanes, it's going to impact 2 neighbors that have had the privacy, quiet of a woods right next to their homes. And then you talk about how are we going to be impacted with electrical? Are you going to be able to get the trucks underneath the power line? And what are you gonna do when it's time to build? Are we gonna be impacted? We'll have to shut down if they can't fit under the power line to get into that lot. Are we gonna be impacted where you have to shut down the power line to get them under that or to move the power line? That's an impact on us. Also, traffic. You're potentially bringing in 20 cars onto our street. Additional traffic. Everybody treats Harford as a cul-de-sac. I live down, I'm the last house on the left by the tracks. Everybody comes down that street with children, with bicycles, walking their kids on with buggies, little so they treat it currently as that. But now you're adding 20 more, potentially 20 more cars coming down. Everybody turns around in my driveway, everybody. So we get a lot of cars coming down and then they realize, even though it says no through street, they realize, oh, the tracks, I can't go anywhere, and they turn around. So you're adding all these people to our quiet little street. You're also taking out the woods behind. And that creates, we're gonna be, the peacefulness, it's gonna go away. Cause I'm in the end, I can hear what's going on at Pine Grove. It's 7 AM. They start at 7 AM. Even with my window shut, I can hear them doing all the trucks beeping and everything going on. So this is really close to my house. We're gonna hear all kinds of noise if you decide to do this project, which is gonna impact. And then you say, oh, there's gonna be a barrier between Kathy and Karen so that that street, so they don't, fence something. I mean, this is impacting us, the people that live on this street currently. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of language at the meeting last week, which we're curious about with the 55 and older. Oh, but somebody that's under 55 can live there. Then if something happens to the 55 and older, the other person living there gets a year to stay. How are you going to monitor that? That there isn't some grandkid living with grandma and then having parties and bringing in their friends. I mean, these are all questions we have because it's not real clear to us, this project. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Kathleen Kelly.
I am,
Raise your right
oh,
hand.
I'm sorry.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that your testimony will be the truth?
Yes,
Thank you. Please proceed.
I am unfortunately at 406 Harford. I will be right on the street. I've had total privacy in my home since 2007 when I bought it. I knew there was a lot there. I knew it was possible a house could go there. I never in my wildest dreams imagined a 2-lane street going right next to me on the middle of a developed neighborhood street that dead ends at the tracks. We knew about the tracks. We knew about the power plant going across the way. Pine Grove was sort of a surprise when we started seeing all that happening. I also can see that from my porch. I also can hear it every day. I realize people want to develop. I realize that's the thing nowadays, to take every piece of land that has anything going on that they can build on, because they are jamming. I don't know if you've ever driven down Harford Street and looked. It's just a lot, and then there's woods all behind us. Between us, our subdivision, there's a subdivision over there, and then Washington Avenue. So they're jamming a whole section of houses in between 3 established neighborhoods, basically. So I realize we probably have no pull. We probably are just speaking into thin air that it's going to go forward anyway. We just would like to voice our concerns. We're very upset with the letter situation. We did receive a letter for the meeting last week. The sign says July 12th. We got the letter on Monday. The meeting was on Wednesday. The 4th of July was Tuesday. Half the people weren't even home when this letter came in, including my neighbor, Karen. She didn't get the letter at all. I did get the letter because I was off that day and I was there to sign for it. But we were also told when we showed up here last week that another letter was being sent out with the correct date of the 12th on it. No one got that letter. None of us got a letter. And we're also a little interested in knowing why only a sign is posted on Harford Street. This affects Washington Avenue. This affects the people in the subdivision Peachtree. I'm not sure what the name of the street is back there. We may have more neighbors that are interested in this if they even knew this was happening. I mean, if you get one letter, if you look at the reference on the letter, it says Harford Street project. I mean, unless you're a person that's really interested in what's happening on Harford Street, you're going to glance at that and go, oh, that don't matter to me. It should have pointed out. We also, I feel we also should have gotten a copy of the plans so we all see how this is impacting everyone that is surrounding this. Also, we have no idea when this will start, how long it will take, whether we'll be looking at like Pine Grove, where we're looking at a dirt pile for the last 2 years almost. So I just wanted to state my concerns. I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Oh, excuse me,
Ms. Kelly.
Yes.
and Mr.,
in relation
Orange,
to
question.
the first lady, where do you live?
I'm at 406.
So you're right next door to her?
I am next door to Amy.
Okay.
Karen. It would impact them too, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Karen is on one side of it, I'm on the other.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Karen Diggle. Do you swear under the penalties of perjury that the statements you'll make will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Yes, I'd like to begin by stating, as Amy and Kathy did, that I did not receive a single letter. So I believe that is why we have low turnout of our neighbors. And I would like to ask the meeting to be rescheduled and advertised properly and ensure that all of the neighbors that will be affected by this receive notification that there is a meeting.
We'll talk about that
Okay.
in a moment.
All right. And yes, I was hoping that it seems like you're a little bit familiar with the area, but that there were some photographs that you can actually see what the street does look like. It is indeed a dead end street. And so that is a concern, as Amy so well pointed out, that we currently have, which is drivers not knowing that it's a dead end street. So we do have a lot of traffic. But I do want to bring up something else before I begin, is I would like to know how the Board of Appeals was able to install the sign on the property well before the Planning Commission's meeting, and how would the Board of Appeals know that the Planning Commission gave approval for the special exception?
The Board of Appeals does not put the
Right.
sign up, the town clerk does.
Okay, so.
And they have I don't know, the meetings are scheduled and we have to put notice of the public hearing, whether or not we know what the outcome is going to be of any of the meetings.
Okay.
So even if the Planning Commission didn't have the same recommendation that they did, the notice would have still had our meeting on there because it's just a week later.
So if
And we
the
have
Planning
to
Commission
provide enough notice.
did not approve the special exception, the meeting would still be this evening?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Let's see, so, I think Amy and Kathy brought up some of my concerns as well. Yeah, we have, continuing noise from that subdivision, so that's something that we think about every day. To know that, there'll be noise that'll impact us much, much closer to that. And so hopefully if there is a need for senior housing, it could go into that current subdivision. And we're always concerned about resources. And I see here that La Plata is proud to be called the Bird City of Maryland and Tree City, USA. Well, certainly there'll be less birds and less trees. And so, yeah, I have a question. I am a bit doubtful that that lot for, see, on 402, that would be 404. It is indeed 100 feet onto Harford Street. So I would like some confirmation that that is indeed true, because I don't believe my lot is 100 feet on Harford Street. And I believe that all of the lots are similar in size as far as that is concerned. Let's see. Oh, how can you enforce the 55 plus requirement? How is that enforced?
I don't know. That's technically not something that the Board of Appeals is here to address.
Well, we would then be concerned that there would be residents there that do not meet that 55 plus.
Well, this is something, so just to, the function of the Board of Appeals at this time is not to approve development of this property. It's to approve whether or not the applicants can receive a special exception to build something different than what it's technically already zoned for. So as it is now, it is zoned R8, and the owner's plan is to develop that lot no matter what. So whether or not it's a senior living community, it's going to be developed. Our determination here today is determine whether or not they meet the statutory requirements for a special exception to build a senior community. That is the sole at this type of hearing. That is the sole role of the Board of Appeals, not whether or not the development's going to go in at all. We have no power over that.
I would assume the Board of Appeals would likely approve a senior living community because it does not have any impact on the school.
Well, that is one of the statutory, and we'll get into that in a moment, but do you have any other questions or comments?
I believe Amy and Kathy addressed most of my concerns, but yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, with regard to the notice letters being sent, in my packet is a list of owners of adjoining property. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there are 11 of them. I see 3 folks here today. They're all telling me that they did not get letters regarding today's meeting. Were those letters mailed?
They were, sir.
And when were they mailed?
You're talking about the corrective
Correct.
letter that was mailed on July 5th.
July 5th. So, and that was a week ago today. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And they were sent restricted delivery?
Registered.
Registered.
Certified mail.
And so if someone is out of town, the mail would have bounced back. Is that correct?
Once I have sent it at the post office, sir, I cannot control how the U.S. Postal Service
Okay.
handles it.
Well, I mean, if we send it certified, do they have to sign for it?
I couldn't tell you, sir. I don't handle that.
Okay. Well, my question is, have you received any returned notice letters?
I have not, sir.
Have you received any of the green cards indicating that the letters were received and signed for?
Not from the second set, sir.
Okay. So here's my proposal for today. I agree with the statements of the, of, sorry, my, lawyer brain is kicking in from habit. And I want to say civilian witnesses, which I'm just going to say. So my, I agree with the civilian witnesses that, there's a chance that, service was not perfected of the notice letters. And I would like to continue this hearing for, and I'm going to make a motion in a moment to continue this hearing for, multiple reasons. As I indicated in my questions, I believe that the applicant has the burden to show that the proposed location will not overburden existing and planned public facilities and constitute a nuisance because of noise, traffic, number of people, or type of physical activity. And I don't believe that either of those has been met at this time. I understand that the county code does not require a traffic study, but I believe that ours does. That's the only way to show by substantial evidence, which I believe is the standard that we have to use, that it will not be a traffic nuisance. And it may come back, and I'll just note that other applicants have done that. And with regard to the sewer and water, similar from the planning department, if there's any way we can get some real numbers on that, and present us with a little bit, I just need a little bit more. I don't think we've had the evidence to prove that. I think that there are other issues as well, but this is a situation where I think those are the factors that need to be addressed. But I also think that and to address the concerns of the citizens who testified today, the list of adjacent homeowners includes people on Peachtree Court, and I guess the investment company that owns the apartment building. I don't expect we'll hear from them. And so notices were sent to people out. The sign has to be posted on the property where the development is going to be, which is why it's on the lot on Harford Street. But I can't at this time find that proper notice was given of this meeting to all those folks, so we don't have any proof that either the letters were bounced back. So that means that they actually got there at all, or without the signed cards, if they were sent certified mail, there should be some kind of return receipt indicating that they were delivered. Do we get those from the letters that went out for the July 5th meeting? Yes, okay. And when were those mailed out?
I'm sorry. I received 6 cards from the first mailing. They were sent on June 30th.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion to continue this hearing for 3 purposes. One, for notice to be resent to the list of affected property owners. I will, obviously the folks who testified today are free to come to the next meeting, but you've already testified, so we don't need more input. But if anybody else wants to come, I think they should be given the opportunity to do that. But also, very importantly, for the applicant and the planning board to address those 2 concerns that I have with regard to the special exception statute. So that's my motion to continue. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
May I make a clarification?
Yes.
I know you mentioned the traffic study. We do not have a provision for traffic studies in the town code.
Oh, no, the county code doesn't either. That's the issue.
Well, no, they do. But what they did basically was a concept study, which showed that they didn't meet the parameters that required a traffic study. They were
Correct.
less than.
My concern is that, and this isn't aimed at any specific applicant or anybody here today, but if, again, they have to show that it will not be a nuisance. Saying that it's below the threshold for having to do a traffic study does not prove to me that it's not going to be a nuisance. I think the only way to do that is with a traffic study. I think that's my interpretation of the Board of Appeals' code for approval of a special exception. And I think, I reviewed that with council several meetings ago and he agreed with me. So I know that the town code does not require a traffic study for it to pass the planning commission. There's a gap, unfortunate gap, I think, between the statute that governs you and the statute that governs us. And ours, again, it says we cannot grant a special exception. It says shall not. The Board of Appeals shall not grant any special exception unless it finds from the evidence of record that the proposed use of the location will not overburden existing and planned public facilities, several other things, as well as constitute a nuisance because of noise, traffic, number of people, or type of physical activity. And some of this comes from, I don't need to go full into this, but some special exceptions are for businesses and bars and restaurants and that kind of thing. And obviously we're not dealing with that, but I think that the statute says what it says, and I can't vote for granting a special exception unless that's been satisfied.
I do understand that. And I don't know if the town attorney might be able to weigh in, but we've had 2 other special exceptions with this very same instance, and they did not do traffic studies.
No, the last one did have.
They didn't have a traffic study. They had the same they did a concept where that showed that they were less than the number of required trips.
They did more than, I remember hearing much more, and I thought we continued the last one for them to do more work on
Right.
traffic.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
You are correct, Mr. Chairman. We had a closed session where we talked about the policy and what you'd like to see. And while we're throwing traffic study around, and that has a specific term of art for Ms. Harrington and the planning, we asked them to provide evidence about the traffic use. Whether they had to do a traffic study and a traffic count and all those things, it was on their side to decide what they needed to give to you to prove their case that there wasn't going to be a burden. And I believe in the last situation, they didn't do a full-blown traffic study, but they did have an engineer prepare some type of information which was persuasive for you. And I believe that's what you're asking for here.
That's correct. And just to bring the applicant for the Panda Express did also have more. It wasn't a full-blown traffic study, but it was, although they might have actually done one because they had traffic counts and.
Well, we had the traffic
estimates.
study from the previous.
And we have traffic study from the
restaurant.
previous one, which back when I was a lowly alternate on the board, we required them to do.
Okay.
As well. So council, thank you. You're correct. I am throwing around a term of art casually when I say traffic study. But I believe that if I was to vote today, I could not find from the record that you have shown that it is not going to be a nuisance. I know it's very hard to prove a negative, but it's sorry, public comment time, questions from and everything is over. This is that's why. So in order to make sure all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, I'd like some more information about traffic, and I'd like some more information about sewer and water. In the past, we have discussed also the potential impact of a senior living facility on our current healthcare facilities. Although it's my understanding that the statutory definition of the public facilities does not include the fire department or the hospital because they are not public facilities. The hospital is private. So that is not something that can be done. So the motion has been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And it carries. So at this time, we're not taking any action on this application, and we will return at a future date for more hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'll draft your order and have it circulated for the continuance on this. And then the clerk will help us with a new hearing date that meets all the advertising and posting requirements.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Honor. Or thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Town Attorney.
Hey,
It's great. I like that.
I've been in court all day. Okay, so thank you all very much for coming in. We'll be back. Oh, I will officially close the meeting. Yes, at 8:15 p.m. Thank you.